Senator Ananda-Rajah.
Thank you, Deputy President. Deputy President, I wish I was not having to speak on this issue. I long for the day when we as a parliament, indeed as a community, do not know the meaning of gender-based violence because it's not part of our lexicon any further. But sadly, that is not the case. That is not the world we live in, even in 2025. Students and staff in any workplace need to feel safe. That is especially so in our educational spaces, our schools, as well as our higher education settings. And for too long, this problem of gender-based violence has really been swept under the carpet. There has been a testimonial injustice dealt out to the many students who have raised concerns over at least a decade with the powers that be in our universities. We all know, but we take it for granted, that safety is a prerequisite to participation in any setting, whether it be work or study, training centres, sporting teams, so on. But if you do believe, as I do, that education is the most powerful lever we have to climb up that ladder of social mobility, then not addressing gender-based violence or any other type of barrier to participation is a denial of this country's wealth. It's denying our country the kind of wealth that it should realise, because it holds people back. It holds people back. And it results in worse social and educational outcomes, ultimately. We know the statistics around gender-based violence. Something like 1 in 12 students in the past 12 months have experienced sexual harassment, 1 in 6 since starting university. That's very common. That's highly common. With regards to sexual assault, the most extreme type of violence, it's 1 in 90 in the last 12 months and 1 in 20 since starting university. These are almost certainly going to be underreported compared to the reality, because most people do not disclose these types of events, because the response, frankly, from the universities has been pretty poor. It's been completely substandard. We also know that in terms of formal complaints made to the university, 1 in 30 students who were sexually harassed made a formal complaint. That's only 3%. So there is gross underreporting. And the same with sexual assault. Only 5.6% have made formal complaints to the university. The question must be asked as to why that is so. In terms of the most prevalent settings within a higher education context, these events tend to occur, incidents tend to occur in clubs and societies, followed by student accommodation. That wouldn't have been on my radar. Student accommodation, I mean, where people basically try and find sanctuary after a busy day at university or in class. And of course then in private homes and residence. It's simply not good enough. But the statistics belie the real burden, and that's only conveyed through qualitative data. And I'll just read out a few quotes here. This from a student who experienced unsolicited sexual advances. Common. I've certainly experienced it when I was a junior doctor. Despite clearly mentioning that I was not interested, my colleague approached me. It was an invasion of personal space, and we were in my room prepping for an exam. He tried to kiss me, and I pulled back in shock. He said, "But you were talking so openly about wanting romantic and sexual freedom. In what universe is that even acceptable?" But apparently this is the norm in our universities. Then there are, of course, the catcalls. Is there any woman or girl around who has not ever been subjected to catcalls? Yelling, whistling, honking of cars, and at worst case, stalking, which we know is even more prevalent now thanks to our virtual worlds. This from a student. I was at a college event at the bar, ordering drinks, and this guy came up to me clearly drunk. He tried to look under my dress. I felt very self-conscious and walked away as fast as I could. There are many women out there, and girls and young women, who have experienced this, and we all know what that feels like. You tend to freeze. You are so self-conscious and threatened that the response, you revert to your primal response, which is fight or flight. And if it's flight, it's a sense of paralysis. Then, of course, there are the invasive questions, the inappropriate language, and the inappropriate jokes. Going to university, I dealt with men stalking me online, following my class timetable at uni to know where I was, and I tried to avoid them. There was one quote that particularly jumped out at me, and this was from a student who used the bus at night time to get about university. As you know, universities instituted these transport services at night in order to actually help students, particularly women, feel safe. But this is what one student disclosed. I was asked extremely private, personal, and uncomfortable questions about my sex life by a uni bus driver when he used to drive me around the campus late at night. You're essentially a captive audience in that kind of setting. It's just awful to read. And we also know that there are certain faculties and subjects at university which are male-dominated. And for these areas are fraught, particularly for women students. And these domains of study desperately need more gender balance in order to drive the kind of cultural change that is essential at university levels. But this is what women encounter. I am a young woman who has studied in a massively male-dominated field. I often face comments from fellow students and lecturers about my physical appearance, ranging from unnecessary compliments to sexual and degrading comments. At times when I have rejected the romantic advances from other students, I have been threatened to have my name slandered, which has the potential to greatly harm my academic career. I have also had men engage in intimidating behaviours after my rejection of them. I constantly fear being too nice. That is the experience of millions of Australian women currently, as well as women in the past. And it's really as a nod to them that we are bringing forward this legislation. So as you know, Deputy Speaker, in February of this year, the National Student Ombudsman opened its doors for the first time. And this is essentially a watchdog for the university sector. It is a watchdog with teeth. It has all the powers of a royal commission. And it's designed to hold universities to account and increase transparency, and it also has an educative role. So if students are not getting the kind of results they need to get from universities, they can escalate to the Ombudsman on all kinds of matters: discrimination, racism, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, gender-based violence, you name it. But that's not enough. We have to go further, and this is why we introduced this legislation. This legislation will essentially bring forward a more robust framework to address gender-based violence in universities, and it builds upon the Ombudsman work. It essentially puts the onus on higher education providers to introduce preventative strategies, and it will have a much stronger compliance function with penalties attached. It imposes a positive duty on universities to lift their game. It will have a national code which will set best practice standards, which will be informed by the experts, and it will attempt to address the drivers that lead to this kind of behaviour. It will certainly prioritise prevention, and it will hold the boards and the chairs, who are the vice-chancellors, the CEOs of universities, to account. And I think that's really important. If you really want to drive cultural change, you have to start at the top. You have to start at the top. You have to hold the top dogs accountable, and this is what this legislation will do. It will have an educative function and it will be transparent. It will report to the Parliament. There will be regular reporting of incident data in these institutions, and it will also, and I think this is important, establish a specialised unit focused on gender-based violence in the Department of Education. Again, this unit will be designed to educate but also enforce. And there will be public reporting, not only in this Parliament, but on, I hope to see it on a website, for example, which will be accessible to all Australians, because there's nothing like shining spotlight on poor behaviour. So it will have a naming and shaming function. Deputy Speaker, I will conclude by just saying that this has been a long time coming, and I pay tribute to the many, many activists and advocates over a long period of time, some over 10 years, who have worked towards this outcome. It is through your advocacy, your voices, your hard work, blood, sweat and tears that we have delivered this. And I'm proud that it has been a Labor government which is female-dominant, by the way, 56% women, with a cabinet at gender parity, that has listened and now is taking substantive action to address this problem. But with all types of cultural problems, it takes time, and I think that it's not just frameworks and legislative bodies and agencies and watchdogs that do it, but it takes a whole of society effort to expunge this kind of behaviour. Thank you, President.
Thank you, Senator Ananda-Rajah.